Good morning. So we look at James chapter 2 today. And James starts out with my brothers and sisters in this chapter, reminding us that we are family in Jesus Christ. We are family of God that way, sisters and brothers. And then he asks a question. He says, do you, with your acts of favoritism, really believe in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ? And he goes on and he talks about, showing favoritism, showing partiality to maybe those who are rich or those who have a little bit more or those who have maybe a position of power or leadership within the community. And, it's reminding me of Jesus when he talked about, a person coming to the banquet and sitting in a place of honor. And then, the host says, there's other people here, more important you need. But, the showing partiality and giving authority, giving credence to people that have money or wealth or a position, maybe on no merit of their own. But I think about in our society today, we just got done with this election. And, well, we're not done with it. But some of these people of wealth, movie stars, people in the entertainment industry, let's just say, just because they are well known, just because they have money for whatever reason, and some of them it's money that they got from their parents or whatever at no work of their own, but they're telling us what we should do. And have they got any more, they don't have any more credence than we do. They don't have any more authority. What they say shouldn't carry any more weight than what the poorest person on the street should. But we're not going to hear about what the poorest person on the street says of who this person would favor and whatever, because, well, they don't have any power. They don't have any prestige. And often in our society today, wealth has given a lot of people power and prestige that they just have no right to, that they have no claim to. And I think about that with so much of our entertainment industry. I'm going to pick on them. That's just the way it is. But you know as well as I do who I'm talking about a little bit. These people that try to tell us how to live and how to do whatever, and they've got no clue, absolutely no clue what it is to live paycheck to paycheck, or even worse. They've got so much. And they live in these fancy places, and they're so unattached from the reality of life for 95% of us, but yet they try to influence us. So James is saying, beware of showing favoritism or giving people of wealth and power and position any more authority than what they really should have. And He's guiding us in our way that we live, and it's reminiscent of so many stories of a bedraggled person comes and sits in church, and everybody ignores that person, whereas a person with a fancy suit and stuff comes in, and everybody wants to get to know him a bit. But that's the way we are. As human beings, each and every one of us has some of this prejudice within us, and it's really hard to get past that. It is. And so James is warning us here about, how we look at others and how we judge others depending on their appearance and giving more authority to some than what they really, really should have, And, James writes, has God not chosen the poor in the world to be rich in faith and to be heirs of the kingdom that he has promised to those who love him? And he says, if you dishonor the poor, you're oppressing them. It's not the way you should do it. And then in verse 8, he says, you would do well to fulfill the royal law. And I don't know if any of you have really thought about this as the royal law, but it's, love your neighbor as yourself. We think about that as the golden rule, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, more or less. But the royal law is to watch out for others around you. You know, don't put yourself above them. He says, if you show partiality, you commit sin. You know, if you say, well, that person isn't worthy of my even talking to him, or whatever it might be, you know, if you show partiality, if you value one person above another, or if you, because of, you know, their power, their prestige, their having whatever it might be, you know, he's saying, you got to be careful. You got to be careful on all of those things. And in verse 10, and he says, for whoever keeps the whole law but fails in one point has become accountable for all of it. And, you know, and it's true. You know, we can just look at the 10 Commandments. I mean, we've got the 10 Commandments, and, you know, if any one of you can certify to me that you've followed even one of them 100%, you know, we've all failed. We've all failed. You know, the one, you shall not kill. Well, we probably haven't really killed anybody, but, you know, if we slander somebody, if we do, I mean, there are ways of degrading others or killing their spirit or putting them down that, you know, isn't the same as, you know, physically killing. But, you know, each and every one of us has broken those 10 Commandments. I mean, it's just, you know, I think about the rich young ruler that came to Jesus and said, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And, you know, and he thought he had fulfilled all the commandments perfectly. Well, you know, I mean, it take a pretty good imagination to think that you had lived and fulfilled all the commandments. And Paul, James rather, is just reminding us that, you know, if we've broken one law, if we've sinned in one fashion, you know, we're guilty and accountable to the whole law. And we are. We owe our salvation to Jesus on the cross. And that's the only thing we can claim. And James talks about it. I'm so used to talking about Paul that, you know, it's hard now to switch gears. But James writes, you know, that judgment without mercy to anyone who has shown no mercy. Or judgment will be without mercy to those who haven't shown mercy. And he says mercy triumphs over all. And then in the next, the finish, the last, you know, from 14 to the end of this chapter, James talks about works, good works. And, you know, Paul talked a lot about, you know, faith. And in Hebrews, just a couple of days ago, we talked a lot about all of these people of faith in the Old Testament and how they were deemed righteous by their faith in God. James puts a little bit different spin. He says faith without works is dead. I mean, verse 17 of chapter 2. So faith by itself, if it has no works, is dead. You know, James is saying you can believe in God all you want, and you can profess to believe in God all you want. But if your life doesn't show it, it doesn't do you any good. You know, and that's, you know, I mean, I've talked a lot of times that, you know, our good works are our thankful response to the faith and the mercy of God. You know, our good works are the result of our faith. Our good works are our thank you to God for the faith that saves us. And our good works are the way that we show the world around us that we live in God's grace and in God's glory. And he says, you know, if a brother or sister is naked and lacks daily food, and you say, go in peace, keep warm and eat your fill, but you don't give them any clothes, you don't give them anything to eat, you don't do anything, have you done any good? Well, of course not. I mean, you know, when a person has needs, I mean, you can't just say, hey, have a great day and walk away. You got to do something about it. And this is what James is talking about within our good works. And that's, you know, when we gather for worship and we put our offerings into the offering plate, or we mail them into our charities, or whatever it is we do, you know, that is a way that we are doing our good works, and we are showing our faith, and by sharing and being gracious with others, and reaching out to those that, you know, that do have those needs, you know, and I have no problem with helping the poor and the needy. I have some issues with helping people that are just totally lazy and just expect everything. I mean, there's the difference between things, but yet there I am, judging again. and not knowing maybe the whole story sometimes, but regardless, James talks here about faith and good works and how they're tied together. We can't have one without the other, and we shouldn't think that because we have this faith in God that we can do anything and everything we want. That's not true. We need to live and to share and to go on that way. And James goes on, he talks about Abraham and how God's call to sacrifice his son and all of that, and he says Abraham believed God and it was reckoned to him as righteousness, and he was called a friend of God. And so he's tying the good works, because Abraham was going to take his son and sacrifice his son as God had asked. That was the works, the works of faith that Abraham was called to. And this is what James uses as an example of faith without works is dead. We can say we believe in God, but if we don't live that faith, our faith is as good as dead. Basically, that's kind of where James is coming from, and we need to be paying attention. The last verse of chapter 2, it says this: "For just as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead." And you think about that. Your body, you're living, you're breathing, you're walking and talking and doing all of these things. But when the spirit of life leaves your body, it's dead. The body by itself is nothing without the spirit. And he says, so it is with faith without works. Faith without works is just like your body without the spirit in it. It's just a lump of earth waiting to return again to what it was. So live a life of faith, and may others see God in you. God's blessings.